Time now for our social story. We post the topics and you decide what you want to do a deep dive on. Now the choices: a couple murdered in Arkansas in front of their 2 young daughters, the presidential fitness test returning, and Lyme disease threat with doctors reporting a sharp rise in ER visits related to tick bites. And 42% of you decided you want to know more about the husband and wife murdered in Arkansas. Now, the suspect in the killings of a couple on a remote Arkansas hiking trail is now formally charged with 2 counts of capital murder. Podcast host of Hidden Killers, Tony Brueski, joins me now for the latest in this case. Tony, what have you been following in this case?
There's a lot that we've been following in this case. Now that the man has been arrested, Andrew McGann, he is now been charged. And we are hearing that he has allegedly made an admission to the crime itself to authorities. He has not yet pled out in court. Coming up on the 25th, and they are possibly expecting a not guilty plea despite that admission that took place earlier this week. There was a DNA match that also helped authorities match it up to Andrew McGann. He was arrested in a barber shop, in a salon, just the other day when he was getting his hair cut. Police came in, made the arrest. We actually talked last night to the stylist who was that very salon cutting his hair, and the shock of what took place, realizing that the person whose hair she was cutting was in fact the man accused of murdering Clinton and Kristen Brink on that hiking trail in Devil's Den.
And what more can you tell us about the suspect, Andrew McGann, and what are we learning about how he ended up teaching in Arkansas?
Well, that's the interesting thing, and that's the journey that we've been going on. And here's the disturbing reality of how Andrew McGann ended up teaching in Arkansas, despite multiple allegations of predatory and inappropriate behavior towards students at districts in Texas. And now we're hearing allegations coming out of Oklahoma from some parents, unverified, but they are allegations. McGann was never formally charged or even reported to authorities. Instead, he was quietly allowed to resign each time, leaving behind internal complaints locked away in confidential personnel files. Why? Well, because districts quite often fear lawsuits, bad PR, and lengthy investigations, and there are laws at times preventing this information from traveling from district to district. It often leads them to handle these issues privately and internally rather than involving law enforcement or child protective services. On top of that, there's no national database or requirement for schools to share disciplinary records when a teacher moves from state to state. Personal privacy laws and non-disclosure agreements further shield these allegations from view. It's a glaring gap in the mandatory reporting and internal district communication that allowed McGann to bounce freely from one unsuspecting community to another until he allegedly committed these horrific murders at Devil's Den State Park in Northwest.
And finally, Tony, what are you hearing about how the community is reacting to this killing of this married couple? I mean, this is a place where so many people in that area in the Ozarks go to hike and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, hiking is a huge thing in this neck of the woods. You have one of the largest hiking systems and bike trails in the country. It is what people do. And they certainly cut back this last week after this horrible news came out. There certainly is a sense of trepidation. There is a sense of relief that he has been found. But the unsettling part of this is appears to be rather a random attack, not necessarily a domestic incident or something of that nature. So there is somewhat amount of fear that still exists out there, the fear of a possible copycat or others, and safety in general on trails out there with little to no cell service. What happens if something like that again?
And I'm interested, you get a lot of listeners to your podcast. What are they most interested in when it comes to this case?
The biggest thing is, how was this guy here? How was he able to be a teacher? He was actually going to be employed by the Springdale School District, which is one of the districts here in Northwest Arkansas, and he was set to begin teaching this very next week. Obviously, he's been arrested. That will not be happening. But the question ultimately goes back to that school system and the failures in reporting possible predatory behavior from district to district.
All right, Tony Brueski, thank you for that analysis.